atheists are framing the logical problem with a goal of showing that the existence of an all-powerful, all-good God is logically contradictory to the existence of evil. So they both can't exist at the same time. They're framing this as if it's a logical contradiction. But when you look at it, when you look at the two premises, you can see that there is no explicit logical contradiction. And those two existing together is not explicitly logically contradictory, such as if we said God exists and God doesn't exist. Now that is a contradiction. So what we're dealing with when we're looking at this problem are some underlying assumptions, some implicit assumptions. So we're going to take a look at a couple of those. And of course, these have been dealt with brilliant philosophers and theologians have done such extensive work on all of this. So I just encourage you, if this is a subject that you're really intrigued in, know that there's a much deeper dive to get into on this. But basically, the first assumption is that if God is all-powerful, he could create any world he wanted to. If he's all-powerful, he could create any world he wants. But in response to that, we can answer that God can only create any possible world. God can create any world that's possible to create. But a world with logical contradictions isn't possible, such as, these are the examples you've probably heard, these are the common ones I hear, is a square circle, or a married bachelor, or how about free agents who are truly free, but are limited in what they're allowed to choose. If they can only do good things, then this is a logical contradiction. So God can create any possible world. The second assumption is that if God is all good, he should desire a better world than this. He should want a world without evil and desire that above a world with evil. But think about this. Typically for human beings to be able to determine or to know how something should behave, we come upon that knowledge one of two ways. Either we created the thing and we know how it should perform from the perspective of the creator, or we've seen so many instances of a thing working out its perfections and achieving what it was meant to do. We've seen so many instances of it that we know how it should behave or what it should want or should do. But I don't know about you guys, but I did not create God or this universe. Anyone in here? You agree? Okay. And I also have not witnessed several instances of gods and universes. So I can't, from either one of those perspectives, I cannot say what God should want or what he should do. And so when we look at these assumptions, we can see that there's some pretty prideful things going on in us as human beings, to even think that as created beings we could determine these things. And it's not really hard to think of a few things that God could use pain and suffering for, a few good things that he could use them for. For example, all the virtues that we value the most wouldn't exist without the opposite. Compassion doesn't exist without suffering. Charity doesn't exist without poverty. Forgiveness doesn't exist without wounds and offenses and things like that. And courage doesn't exist without danger. God uses suffering and pain to draw us to himself. I don't know why I throw myself more on God's, at his feet when I'm hurting and wounded and just desperate than when things are going my way. I just, I get on autopilot sometimes, and so God uses those times, and he uses our pain and suffering to change us into the image of his suffering servant son.